Hello everyone and welcome back. In this lecture we'll continue our discussion of the math functions. Last time we mentioned that we need to import the math module, since this module has most of the functions, and we'll be using the math module to use some of the functions. So when we call the functions, it goes like math, then module name, dot, and then method name. That's for most of the methods, most of the functions. Okay. Let's start by looking at the square root method or function. So the square root function tells us the square root of a number that will give us the square root. Let's look at an example. So math that square root of, let's start from the ones we know, 16, that will give us 4. Math that square root of 25, that will give us 5. So that way we can find out the square root of any number. Let's say 2, 3, 4, and so on. Next, let's see the round method. So this round method will round a given number to certain decimal points. Let's see how we can use that. So to use this, we just say round and then pass the number. For instance, let's say we want to round 12.4 to 1 decimal point. So one digit after the decimal point. Or maybe, yes, 1 digit should be fine. So then once we pass the number, comma, and then how many digits that we want after the decimal point, we specified here. So we said 1. So we simply pass 1. We get 12.4. Now let's round the same number to 2 decimal digits. So 12.423, we want to round this to 2 digits after the decimal point. So we pass the number, comma, then how many digits we want after the decimal point. In this case 2. So we pass 2. And we get 12.43. And if you don't want any decimal points, any digits after the decimal point, you simply pass the number in the round function and just leave it like that. So 12.0, that's the same as saying this to 0. Okay, then round, let's say 12.52 to 4 decimal digits. So we get 12.52 since we don't have any more digits. That's the round function. Next, let's look at the power function. So we saw that we can use double multiplication for power. For instance, if I say 2 times 4, that means 2 to the power of 4, and that will give me 16. There's also a power function specific for this. It's the POW, that's the power function. Okay, let's see some examples. So math that power, and then we pass the number we want to power, let's say 2, and then the power that we want, comma 4. So this means 2 to the power of 4. That should give us 16. Similarly, we can say math that power of 3 to the power of 3. That should give us 27. Math that power of 5 to the power of 4. That should give us 625, I believe. 625. Math that power. We can also power to a negative number, let's say 100 to the power of -2, that's 1 over 10,000. Similarly, we can do math that power of, let's say, -3 to the power of -4, and that will give us this number. So that's the power function. Next, let's look at the maximum and minimum methods. So as the name implies, the maximum method returns the largest of the numbers in a given sequence. Let's look at an example. So we can say maximum of, let's say, 2, 4, 2, 4, and 3. That will return 4. Maximum of, let's say, 34, 45, and 44. That will return 45. Let's look at one more example. Maximum of -3, -4, -5. That returns -3. That's the maximum function. And similar to the max, we have a minimum function, and the minimum function returns the smallest of the numbers passed in the function. Let's look at some examples. The minimum of 5, 8, and 3. We get 3. Minimum of 33, 33, 45. We should get 33. Minimum of, let's say, 0, -1, -3, -1. We get -3. So that's the minimum function. We also have trigonometric functions like sine, cosine, tan, and then arcsine, arccosine, arctan, and so on. We can use those similarly by importing the math module, and then by calling the function in the math module. So for instance, if I want to find out the sign of a given number, I can say math.sine and then pass the number that we want. Let's say sine of 1. We get 0.841. Math.sine of 45. We get 0.85, and so on. That's the sine function. And similarly, to use the other trig functions, we can call whatever function we want in the math module. So for instance, we can say math.cosine and then pass cosine of, let's say, 0. I think that's 1. Oops. Math.cosine of 0. That's 1. Math.cosine of 90. I think that's 0. -0.44. Math.cosine of 30. I think that's 0.8 something, 0.15. So we can also use these trigonometric functions that are found in the math module. These are few of them, but there are plenty more. There is a radian function also, there's a degree function, and there are much more. Okay, thank you everyone, and see you at the next lecture.